All right, so it's day 45 of going through my old journal entries. The quote for this day was: "Opportunity is missed by people because it is dressed in overalls and looks like work." I have thoughts on that coming from Thomas Edison, but anyway, the prompt was: "Have you ever turned down an opportunity because you thought it would be too much work? Are you afraid of hard work or do you welcome it?" So if you're following along, pause here, kind of think about or write down what your response to that would be. And I'll be back here in a second with what I wrote. All right. So, have you turned down an opportunity because you thought it would be too much work? Let's see. In the past, I considered myself a hard worker and generally welcomed it. Okay, this might be interesting because I have just very, very recently realized that millennials were like instilled in this grind culture and that I had kind of taken that on. So let me see what else I wrote, but then I want to talk about that. Okay, so in the past I considered myself a hard worker and generally welcomed it. With schoolwork, I always felt like I could do better. With hobbies like music and dance as well, I never studied or practiced as much as I should have. I somehow still managed to excel in school. Not so much with sports, music, dance, or other hobbies. But when it came to following directions, listening to my teachers, and working hard in an actual job, I was always one of the most obedient and competent workers when in class or on the clock. So yeah, like if it was like a hobby or something, like now I'm realizing that I think I've had ADHD my whole life. And so like with hobbies where it wasn't something that like I was getting graded on or something like that, like I didn't really care that much and I would lose interest in it pretty early on. But then I didn't want to be considered like a quitter. So even though I wasn't interested in it, I wouldn't quit, but I would keep going and not really putting in as much effort as I should if this was going to be like a lifelong hobby. And that's one thing that I hope parents have changed. Like I'm thankful that my mom like put me in some of these activities, and I'm thankful that I tried some of these activities, but I wish that there wouldn't have been the pressure to not quit. And me and my sister actually talked about this a little bit when I went to go visit her, because she would quit things. Like if she wasn't enjoying something, she would quit. And I don't remember my parents giving her like a terribly hard time about it, but I know that like something was said. Like I'm pretty sure I do remember my dad maybe probably my dad like making some comment about her being a quitter. And like I don't think that's right for people to have kids, but I do remember if it wasn't my dad, there was definitely like TV shows or something instilling somewhere in me that like you shouldn't quit, like you need to follow through with things that you start. And so I stuck with piano and violin, and I did quit gymnastics. I'm not going to tell that story, maybe later at some point, but it was like my most embarrassing moment for like a long time, led me to quit gymnastics. But yeah, I just kind of stuck with these things and did the bare minimum because I didn't enjoy them, but other people like wanted me to do them, or I didn't want to be a quitter. So I just kind of stuck through things that I kind of wish I would have quit and like tried out other things. But yeah, whenever it came to work or school, like when I was in school, I didn't study like as well as I should for tests, but I did well enough to not upset my teachers. And like in class, I would like not talk when I wasn't supposed to. I followed rules. And then at jobs too, it was kind of weird because I was a slacker in the sense that I always got there. I was always running late, but I never showed up late. I showed up like I was rushing, clocking in, right on time. But while I was at work, I would work. You know, I had this one job, my first job, and while I was on the clock, if there wasn't anything to do, I would just not know. I would find things to do. I was like, okay, well, what can I do? I can clean, organize the storage closet, or make a spreadsheet to better organize my stuff. Like, I was always just like, I'm getting paid to be on the clock. I'm going to be working. And, yeah. So, what I said here, what I wrote beyond that was, it was out of the classroom / work that I had issues. For some things, I'll get bursts of motivation and can work extremely hard, like with smaller projects, but for long-term projects or work, I struggle to keep motivated, which is why I'm afraid to jump into starting a business or a new hobby. Because I would feel so motivated for things, and I would just get so hyper focused, and I would spend hours like researching something and really thinking like, man, I want to do this, and just spend money. I would spend money on things. And then it was through like TikTok or Instagram, people sharing these memes about like them having ADHD, and then like all of the like discarded hobbies that they have. And like somebody said we should make a group for ADHD people to share like their hobby stuff that they've bought while they were like hyper focused and into something that they've kind of let fall to the side. And I said, maybe don't get rid of it, because if you've got the space, because I found myself, the motivation comes in cycles. And so I'm glad that I've kept some of the stuff that I've gotten so into on a hobby. Like the one more recently was candle making. I really thought I was going to start this like sustainable candle making business. And I watched so many YouTube videos about it. And I was looking into like what kind of wax I would need and how to melt the wax and all this, you know, just all this stuff. I bought a candle making kit. I have the jars, but like, it's like once I bought the kit, that's where it stopped. I lost the steam for it. And so now I have a candle making kit. I have like 2 pounds of wax. I have wicks. I have the little sticker dots to stick them in the bottom. I have a million like used yogurt jars that I've saved that I just thought would be perfect to make these candles in. And that's where it stopped. So yeah, I have like hobbies like that. Gardening. I could never keep a garden. And I'm telling my roommate, I'm like, I want to grow my own food, but I'm convinced I need to like hire somebody to garden for me. Like, if we ever were going to do that, like I would need to hire a gardener, because I've tried so many times to start a garden and I'll get so motivated. I'll buy seeds and, you know, supplies, and I'll go out there and I'll even plant the seeds. But almost every time, like during the process of planting them, I'll already feel myself like starting to lose steam. And there's some push of like, well, you've already bought the seeds, you need to plant them. But then as far as like getting everything weeded, keeping everything maintained, like a garden is not something that ADHD people can keep up with, like, because you've got to consistently be tending to it. And so I would love to grow my own food. Right now, I don't think it would be possible. Maybe if I continue to make progress on sticking with habits, I could, but yeah, I don't know. But in terms of work, as long as there's accountability with jobs, I'm very good, and I don't mind working hard. It's just getting the motivation. So, yeah, I would like to start my own business, but I'm still just like kind of scared of that. And then I go on to say, you know, I said I'm afraid to jump into starting a business or a new hobby. And then I said, I think it's also why I struggle with my current job and PhD. It's hard to find the motivation to consistently work hard, because my current job is not like a regular job where you have to clock in and be on the clock. It's not an hourly job, and there's no one. Even when I was going into the office, there wasn't someone like looking over, and like my boss didn't know like when I was coming in or leaving or anything like that. And on the one hand, I love that freedom, but then on the other hand, like, I felt like I did need more accountability to keep me, you know, focused and being as productive as I could. And yeah, with the PhD, I've really had to like adjust, because we don't, a lot of these classes, you don't have like a test every week. You don't have a homework due every week. So if you don't keep up with everything, you know, you can find yourself like getting too far behind. But thankfully it's starting to change this year. So I said, I hope I can find a way to change this and finish up the rest of my life a bit better and less stressed than it's played out so far. And yeah, like I've said, during this time I was really stressed with work and school, but I was also starting to feel like there was a turnaround coming. And I still feel that way. I still feel like things are turning around and I am becoming better at working, but in a different sense. Like, I had started out talking about the millennials that are overachieving. Right now, people are talking about this thing called quiet quitting, that Gen Z is like, why are you like working so hard to fight and compete with people for these jobs that the employers don't care about you, the employers don't treat you well, you're going above and beyond like what you're being paid for what? And I think that's something that has changed. Like, I think in the past, if you went above and beyond, you were rewarded for it. You would have a better position, you would have a promotion. But now I think it's a change in people and workers, but it's also a change in the companies. You know, back in the day, you worked for a company and you were, I mean, more valued than most people are now. And now people are just like, this company doesn't care about me. And they're saying that with COVID happening and everything, that people really realized how little they meant to their companies. And so they're just, instead of trying to go above and beyond, a lot of people are just doing what they're paid for. And I don't know, in the past, me and my roommate actually argued about this the other day, because he said that at a place where he used to work, he could get his stuff done in like 4 to 6 hours during an 8 or 12-hour shift, and his supervisors would be a little upset and be like, well, help these people, you know, they need some help. And his thought was like, well, why should I be required to do their jobs when they're not doing it, when they're being lazy? And so, I mean, there is like a little bit of, you know, that is like, but the way I used to take my job was, I'm on the clock, I may as well be working. They're paying me, you know, I may as well be working. Whereas his was like, this is the job I'm assigned to do. I'm not gonna pull the slack for other people. But then my counterpoint was, well, would you rather they fired them and give you their job duties, like their full job duties? So I don't know, like I just wish people were good, because I tend to side with the workers for the most part, but I do see instances where employees are lazy and not, you know, like too lazy and don't do their job. So I mean, overall, I side with the employees, but I understand that there are instances where it's not necessarily the employer that's bad. But yeah. In response, let's get back to the original question. Have you ever turned down an opportunity because you thought it would be too much work? Not necessarily because it would be too much work. I don't think I've ever turned anything down because I thought it would be too much work. But more recently, I've been turning things down because I'm trying to be realistic about what I can actually accomplish and what is going to, just being more realistic about myself and how I tend to work and trying to work around that. But anyway, that is day 45. I'll be back tomorrow with day 46.